The stars were quiet that morning when the ships arrived. On New Jeju, farmers were already in the fields tending to crops that would feed 3 million people across the colony. Children played near the irrigation canals while their parents worked. Nobody expected what came next. The Valkyrie warships dropped from faster-than-light travel directly above the planet. There were 12 of them, massive vessels covered in angular armor plating. They moved into position with practiced ease, forming a perfect ring around the world below. The farmers stopped working when the shadows fell across the fields. They looked up at the sky and saw death hanging above them. New Jeju's defense coordinator, a woman named Hana Lee, sent out an emergency broadcast immediately. She tried every frequency, every channel, begging the ships to explain their presence. The only response was silence. Then the bombardment began. The Valkyrie weapons fired bright blue beams that carved through the atmosphere like knives through paper. Where they touched the ground, everything simply ceased to exist. Mountains evaporated, cities melted into glass. The oceans boiled away in massive clouds of steam. 3 million people died in less than an hour. By the time the attack ended, New Jeju was a dead rock glowing red from the heat. Hanali wasn't on New Jeju when it died. She was on Gaul 5, a research station orbiting a distant moon. She was a scientist studying alien plant life, living quietly among 40 other researchers. They received the distress signal from New Jeju at the same moment the Valkyrie ships appeared in their own sky. The research station had no weapons. It had no shield strong enough to stop military-grade firepower. The director immediately transmitted a surrender message, explaining they were civilians conducting peaceful research. The Valkyrie responded by destroying the station's communications array. Then they sent soldiers. Hana hid in a supply closet when she heard the airlock breach. Through a crack in the door, she watched armored aliens march through the corridors. They were tall creatures, covered in gray scales with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. They moved through the station methodically, gathering the researchers in the main laboratory. The station director, an old man named Daishim, stood in front of his people and tried to speak. A Valkyrie soldier struck him across the face with the butt of its weapon. Daishim fell to the floor, blood running from his mouth. He tried to get up, but the soldier shot him. Then they shot the rest, one by one. Quickly and without ceremony, Hana pressed her hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. She recorded everything on her personal device, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. 17 people survived only because they had been in different sections of the station. The Valkyrie left after 40 minutes, not bothering to search the entire facility. They had made their point. The same day Hanbit Station died. It was a mining colony deep in an asteroid field, home to 40,000 workers and their families. The Valkyrie used different weapons there. They fired missiles that burrowed into the asteroid and detonated from within. The entire rock shattered like glass, taking everyone inside with it. There were no survivors at all. Across human space, people watched the news in horror. 3 colonies destroyed in a single day. Over 3 million dead. And then came the message from the Valkyrie hegemony. Supreme Commander Thalarix appeared on every screen, every broadcast, every communication device across 14 human star systems. He was massive even for his species, his scales darker than the others, his 4 arms adorned with military decorations. When he spoke, his voice was rough and cruel. "Humans," he said, "you have spread across the stars like insects. You build your little colonies and pretend to matter. But you are weak. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. Your people die easily." He paused, letting the words sink in. Behind him, Hana could see other Valkyrie officers standing at attention. They looked proud, confident. "The Valkyrie hegemony has ruled this region for 6,000 years, Thalarix continued. "We have conquered 70 star systems. We have destroyed a dozen species that refuse to submit. Now it is your turn. You will surrender. You will give us control of your worlds, your resources, your ships. You will serve the hegemony, or you will die like the others." He held up 4 fingers. "You have 30 days to deliver your answer. If you refuse, we will erase every human world from existence. We will hunt down your ships. We will kill every last one of you. There will be no mercy, no second chances. Submit or face extinction." The broadcast ended. For several seconds, there was only silence across human space. Then the reactions began. Some colonies panicked. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others wanted to fight, even though everyone knew humanity's fleet was small compared to the Valkyrie armada. The three other spacefaring civilizations in the region sent messages advising submission. The Velkari had never lost a war, they said. Resistance was suicide. On Earth, President Una Choi sat in her office and watched Thalorix's message 3 times. She was a small woman with gray hair, a former military officer who had seen combat in the colony wars 30 years ago. She understood violence. She understood bullies. And she understood that sometimes surrender only guaranteed a slower death. She called a meeting. Within 6 hours, the most important people in human space gathered in a secret facility on Luna, Earth's moon. They came quietly on unmarked ships, telling no one where they were going. Admiral J. Kang arrived from the Defense Fleet. General Hyun Ko came from the ground forces. Agent Sora Im, Director of Intelligence, appeared from wherever she had been hiding. Scientists, engineers, military strategists, they all came. In the meeting room, Una played the Velkari message one more time. Then she turned off the screen and looked at each person in turn. "They think we're weak," she said quietly. "They think because we choose peace, we can't fight. They think because we're quiet, we're afraid." She paused. "They're wrong." Captain Minho Park, an intelligence officer, stood up. He was young for his rank, but his eyes were old. "Madam President, we've been watching the Velkari for 5 years. My division has infiltrated their networks. We know where their fleets are positioned. We know where their homeworld is. We know about their breeding colonies that they think are secret." Agent Sora Im nodded. "We know everything about them. Their command structure, their supply lines, their weaknesses." A scientist named Suman Han raised her hand nervously. "We have weapons. Theoretical ones. We never built them because we didn't need to. But they exist in our computers, ready to be manufactured." Una looked around the room. "Can we win?" Admiral J. Kang considered the question carefully. "Win? Yes, but that's not the right question, Madam President." "Then what is?" "The question is, can we make sure this never happens again?" Una understood. She looked at each person once more, seeing the same cold determination in every face. These were good people. Peaceful people, but they were also human, and humans remembered everything. "Then we don't fight a war," she said. "We end a species." The silence that followed was absolute. Human ships vanished from trade routes overnight. Embassies closed their doors without explanation. Communication channels went dark. The galaxy had grown accustomed to seeing human cargo vessels, human diplomats, human tourists. Now there were none. It was as if humanity had simply held its breath and waited. The Velkari found this amusing at first. Supreme Commander Thalorix laughed when his intelligence officers reported the silence. "They hide like children," he said to his command staff. "They hope we will forget about them if they stay quiet enough." Pathetic. But as the days passed, some of his officers grew uneasy. The silence was too complete, too coordinated. When they tried to probe human space with scout ships, they found nothing. Empty trade stations. Abandoned outposts. It was as if every human had disappeared at once. "They're running," Thalorix decided, scattering to the edges of space. "It doesn't matter. We'll hunt them down after we take their core worlds." He didn't know that behind the silence, humanity was moving with terrible purpose. On Luna, in the unmarked facility, the Silent Council worked day and night. They called themselves that because their work was secret, but also because silence would be their weapon. They would not announce their plans. They would not warn their enemy. They would simply act. Admiral J. Kang stood before a holographic display showing the entire Velkari hegemony. 70 star systems spread across the projection, each one marked with military installations, fleet positions, and colony worlds. Next to him, Captain Minho Park highlighted specific points in red. "Here," Minho said, pointing to a cluster of ships, their primary battle fleet. 3,000 warships divided into 12 groups. "They're positioned to strike at our core worlds the moment the deadline expires." He moved his hand and the display shifted. "Here are their supply depots. Here are their command stations. And here," he touched a blue star near the center, "is Velkarius Prime, their homeworld. 4 billion Velkari live there." General Hyun Ko, a broad-shouldered man with scars on his face, studied the display. "We can't fight them directly. Even with our full fleet, we'd be outnumbered 10 to 1. "We're not going to fight them," Jay said quietly. "We're going to erase them." A woman named Suman Han stepped forward. She was small and wore thick glasses, looking more like a university professor than someone who designed weapons. But the device she projected into the hologram was anything but academic. Project Whisper, she said. We've been developing it for 12 years. It uses quantum entanglement to deliver fusion warheads that bypass conventional shielding. The weapon makes no sound, gives no warning. The target simply ceases to exist. She touched a control and the hologram showed a simulation. A warship floated in space, then simply vanished in a flash of light. No explosion, no debris field. Just gone. How many can we build in 30 days? President Yuna Choi asked. Enough, Sumin replied. We've already started production. We had the factories ready. We just needed authorization. And the biological weapon? Yuna's voice was cold. Agent Sora Im stood. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who seemed to notice everything. We have it. Dr. Hana Lee's team on Gale 5 was studying Velkari biology. They were developing a cure for a disease that affects their young. We've modified it. Modified how? It's now species-specific, fatal, painless. Spreads through their atmosphere in 72 hours. Kills in 96. Only affects Velkari biology. The room was silent for a moment. These were good people talking about genocide. Everyone felt the weight of it. We have a choice, Yuna said slowly. We can surrender and hope they show mercy. We can fight and lose slowly, watching them destroy world after world. Or we can end this completely, make sure no Velkari ever threatens human life again. If we do this, Admiral J said, we become something different, something the galaxy will fear. Good, Yuna replied. Let them fear us. Fear prevents wars better than peace treaties. Over the next 25 days, humanity transformed itself into something it had never been before. Shipyards that had built cargo vessels now produced stealth warships. Factories that had made farming equipment now manufactured weapons. Scientists who had studied stars now calculated firing solutions. But they did it all in silence. No announcements. No broadcast. The Velkari watched human space and saw nothing unusual. Just silence. Captain Minho Park's intelligence division worked miracles. His agents had been embedded in Velkari society for years, posing as merchants, diplomats, even servants. Now they activated, sending back detailed information about fleet movements, supply schedules, and defensive positions. One agent, a woman named Rena Song, had been working as a translator in the Velkari military headquarters for 3 years. She sent back the complete invasion plan, including which human worlds would be hit first and how many civilians the Velkari planned to keep alive as slaves. None, she reported. They plan to kill 90% of us, work the rest to death. They call it efficient conquest. When Yuna read that report, any remaining doubt vanished from her mind. Engineer Tae Shin oversaw the construction of 300 stealth ships. They were small, fast, and completely invisible to Velkari sensors. Each one carried Project Whisper warheads. Each one had a specific target. They won't see us coming, he promised. We've tested them against our own detection systems. Nothing. We're ghosts. Dr. Sumin Han trained the crews personally. 1 shot, she told them. You get 1 shot. Make it count. Then jump to faster than light immediately. Don't wait to see the results. Just fire and run. The biological weapon was more complicated. A man named Jinwoo Nam, who headed the Biological Warfare Division, worked with Hana Lee to refine it. Hana had survived Gale 5, had watched her friends die, and now she used her knowledge to create something terrible. It's painless, she said to Jinwoo one night as they worked. I made sure of that. They'll just go to sleep and not wake up. I'm not cruel. You're creating a plague that will kill billions, Jinwoo replied gently. They killed millions of us without warning, without mercy. They executed my friends while they begged for their lives. Her voice was steady. This is mercy compared to what they did to us. Agent Sora Im's network found something else. 17 hidden breeding worlds where the Velkari raised their young away from their main colonies. These were secret, protected by layers of misdirection and false information. But Sora's agents found them all. Why hide them? General Hyun Ko asked. Because their young are vulnerable, Sora explained. Takes them 5 years to mature. During that time, they're defenseless. It's their species' greatest weakness. Then we hit them too, Yuna decided. All of them. If we do this, we do it completely. Major Yoonji Bayek volunteered to lead the teams that would infiltrate the breeding worlds. She was special forces trained in silent operations. We'll need 17 teams, she said. Small groups. In and out before they know we're there. What will you use? Biological weapons for the young. Fusion charges for the genetic archives. We'll make sure there's no way to bring them back. As the deadline approached, the Valkyrie grew confident. They saw no human military buildup, no fleet movements, no signs of resistance. Thalarix ordered his forces to prepare for the final invasion. It will be glorious, he told his officers. We'll broadcast it across the galaxy. Show everyone what happens to those who refuse the hegemony. On the 29th day, President Yuna Choi recorded a message. She didn't broadcast it. She stored it ready to be sent when the time came. In it, she explained everything. Justified nothing. Simply stated what humanity had chosen to do and why. We didn't want this, she said to the camera. We wanted peace. We wanted to explore the stars and build new homes. But they came to our worlds and murdered our people. They gave us 30 days to surrender or die. We give them no warning at all. The 30th day arrived. The deadline passed. The Valkyrie fleet began to move toward human space, confident in their victory. They had no idea what was coming. In the Luna facility, Admiral J. Kang looked at his command staff. Every face was set. Every eye was hard. They had all made peace with what they were about to do. Signal all units, he said quietly. Operation Silent End is now active. Across 70 star systems, 300 stealth ships moved into position. On 17 hidden worlds, Special Forces teams prepared to infiltrate. On Valkyrius Prime, biological agents activated their delivery systems. Humanity had been silent for 30 days. Now they would teach the galaxy what that silence meant. The first Valkyrie warship died at exactly 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time. One moment it was moving toward human space with 200 sister ships in formation. The next moment it was expanding plasma and radiation. The crew of 800 never knew what happened. They simply ceased to exist. 2 seconds later, 17 more ships vanished the same way. Then 40. Then hundreds. All across Valkyrie space, the proud fleet that had conquered 70 systems was being erased from existence. No warning sirens. No time to raise shields or return fire. Just sudden, absolute death. Lieutenant Rena Song flew her stealth fighter toward a Valkyrie command carrier. She had spent 3 years translating for them, smiling and pretending to be harmless. Now she armed her Project Whisper weapon and fired from 10,000 kilometers away. The carrier was 3 kilometers long, housed 5,000 crew, and controlled an entire battle group. It took 4 seconds for the weapon to reach it. The quantum-entangled warhead bypassed the carrier's shields as if they weren't there, materialized inside the ship's fusion reactor, and detonated. The carrier became a brief sun, bright enough to be seen from nearby planets. Rena didn't wait to watch. She jumped to faster-than-light speed immediately, already heading toward her second target. Her hands were steady on the controls. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a cold determination to finish the job. Across the battlefield that wasn't really a battlefield, 300 human pilots did the same. They appeared, fired, and vanished before the Valkyrie could even identify them. The Great Fleet, which had taken centuries to build, died in 14 minutes. Supreme Commander Thalarix was in his command center on a military station when the reports started coming in. At first, his officers thought there was a malfunction in the communication system. Ships couldn't just disappear like that, but the signals kept coming. Automated distress beacons activating before cutting off abruptly. What's happening? Thalarix roared. His forearms gestured wildly at the displays. Unknown, Commander, an officer replied, his voice shaking. We're losing contact with battle groups across all sectors. No visual confirmation. No enemy ships detected. They're just gone. That's impossible. But it wasn't. In the time it took them to have that conversation, 400 more ships died. The Valkyrie military, which had seemed invincible just hours before, was being systematically destroyed. Thalarix tried to order a retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. The human ships were everywhere and nowhere, invisible, unstoppable. Within an hour, 3,000 warships were reduced to debris fields and radiation clouds. The second phase began immediately. Human ships appeared in orbit around Valkyrie military installations, space stations, and garrison worlds. They didn't engage in traditional combat. They simply delivered their weapons and vanished. A major military installation on the planet Velcros hosted 50,000 soldiers and a weapons development facility. A single human ship appeared above it, fired 6 missiles, and disappeared before the base's defenses could activate. The missiles weren't nuclear. They were something worse. When they detonated, they created a gravitational anomaly that collapsed inward, taking the entire facility with it. The base, the soldiers, the weapons, the research, all of it compressed into a sphere 50 meters wide, then vanished. Where there had been a mountain complex, there was now only a perfectly smooth crater. General Hyun Ko watched the operation from a command ship stationed near human space. He monitored reports from dozens of strike teams, each one hitting a different target. His face showed no emotion as the numbers updated. Military installations destroyed 73. Orbital stations eliminated 112. Garrison forces neutralized 85%. Sir, an officer said, some of the garrison worlds have civilian populations. Should we adjust targeting? Negative, Hyun replied. The civilian areas are not being targeted. Only military installations. Proceed as planned, it was true. The human weapons were precise. A Valkyrie garrison might be obliterated while the city next to it remained untouched. But the message was clear. Humanity could kill you whenever they wanted. They just chose when and where. On Valkyrius Prime, the Valkyrie homeworld, 4 billion civilians went about their day unaware that their military was being destroyed. Children attended their education centers. Workers built ships and weapons for wars they thought were already won. Government officials planned the governance of human space. Commander Jinwoo Nam sat in a small ship in the planet's upper atmosphere, cloaked and invisible. Below him, the capital city sprawled across a continent, glittering with lights and technology. It was beautiful in its own alien way. In his ship's hold sat containers of the modified plague. The bioweapon that Dr. Hana Lee had helped create, painless but absolute, it would spread through the atmosphere in 3 days, reaching every corner of the planet. Within 4 days, every Valkyrie would be dead. Target lock confirmed, his pilot said. Ready to deploy. Jinwoo thought about his daughter who had died on Hanbit Station. She had been 6 years old. He would never see her grow up, never hear her laugh again. The Valkyrie had taken that from him. Deploy, he said. The containers released, falling toward the planet below. They would burn up in the atmosphere, releasing their contents as microscopic particles that the wind would carry everywhere. Invisible, undetectable until it was too late. Jinwoo's ship cloaked again and left orbit. Below him, the Valkyrie continued their day, unaware that they were already dead. The third phase was the most brutal. Major Unji Baek led 17 teams to 17 hidden breeding worlds. These places were beautiful, garden worlds carefully maintained for raising Valkyrie young. The adults here were caretakers and teachers, not soldiers. Unji's team landed on a world called Velka R, a planet of shallow seas and floating islands. Hundreds of thousands of young Valkyrie lived here, swimming in warm waters and learning from their elders. They looked different from adults, smaller with softer scales, eyes that still held curiosity instead of cruelty. Remember what they did, Unji said to her team as they prepared the bioweapon. Remember New Jeju. Remember the execution of civilians. Remember that if we leave even one breeding world intact, they'll rebuild and come back. Her team nodded. They activated the weapon, a modified version of the plague that worked faster on young Valkyrie. Then they planted fusion charges in the genetic archive facilities, where the Valkyrie stored DNA samples and reproductive material. 30 minutes to detonation, her second-in-command said. We need to extract now. They returned to their ship and left orbit. Behind them, the plague spread through the water and air. The young Valkyrie would die within hours, painlessly, falling asleep and never waking. The genetic archives would be vaporized. This beautiful world would become a tomb. Across 16 other worlds, 16 other teams did the same thing. The Valkyrie had hidden their young to protect them, but humanity's intelligence network had found every hiding place. Now those secret worlds became mass graves. Supreme Commander Thalaric sat alone in his command center. The reports had stopped coming because there was no one left to send them. His fleet was gone. His military installations were destroyed. And now reports from Valkyrius Prime were describing a strange illness spreading through the population. He tried to contact other Valkyrie colonies, but communication was difficult. Many of the relay stations had been destroyed in the first strikes. The few responses he received were confused, terrified messages about ships dying and installations vanishing. How? He asked the empty room. How did these weak creatures do this? The answer came in the form of a broadcast that overrode every communication system he had left. President Una Choi's face appeared on his screens. She looked tired but composed. When she spoke, her voice was calm. "Supreme Commander Thalaric," she said, "you declared war on humanity 30 days ago. You killed 3 million of our people without warning. You gave us a deadline to surrender. You promised to erase us from existence." She paused, letting that sink in. "We don't negotiate with those who murder our children. We don't give warnings to those who give us no warning. We don't fight wars when we can simply end the threat completely." Thalaric's scales paled as he listened. "Your fleet is gone. Your military infrastructure is destroyed. Your homeworld is dying. Your breeding colonies have been sterilized. The Velkari species is extinct. It happened while you were confident in your victory. It happened in silence. It happened because you mistook our peaceful nature for weakness." "Please," Thalaric whispered, but she couldn't hear him. "This is what happens when you force humanity to war." Una continued. "We don't stop at victory. We stop at extinction. Tell whoever is left, if anyone is left, that humanity desires peace. But if you bring us war, you bring yourselves oblivion." The broadcast ended. The Lorik sat in darkness, understanding finally what his arrogance had cost his entire species. On Velkarius Prime, the plague had spread to every city. In orbit, the stations were silent and dark. Across 70 systems, the proud hegemony was nothing but debris and ghosts. The silence that followed was absolute. The Velkari had wanted war. Humanity had given them extinction wrapped in silence. The galaxy noticed the silence first. Trade ships that regularly dealt with the Velkari found empty stations and dead worlds. The communication networks that had carried Velkari broadcast for 6,000 years went dark. It took 3 days before anyone truly understood what had happened. The Trolloth Federation sent a scout fleet to investigate. The Trolloth were a military species themselves, warriors who respected strength and understood war. What they found in Velkari space shook them to their core. Commander Yuto of the Trolloth Navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic display. It showed the remains of a Velkari battle fleet, or what had been a battle fleet. Now it was just debris fields stretching across millions of kilometers, thousands of ships reduced to scrap metal and frozen corpses. "What weapon could do this?" his second officer asked. "I don't know," Yuto replied quietly. "But whatever did this, it was precise, surgical. These ships didn't even have time to fight back." They moved on to a military installation on a planet called Velkros. Where there had once been a mountain fortress, there was now a perfectly smooth crater. The ground around it showed no blast damage, no radiation. It was as if something had simply removed a chunk of reality. "This isn't war," Yuto said. "This is extermination." The Trolloth fleet traveled to Velkarius Prime, expecting to find survivors or at least some explanation. Instead, they found 4 billion bodies. The cities were intact. The buildings stood undamaged. But every Velkari was dead, lying peacefully where they had fallen, in their homes, at their workplaces. In the streets, a medical officer examined several bodies. "Some kind of biological agent," she reported. "Species-specific. It shut down their nervous systems. They just went to sleep." She looked up at Yuto. "Sir, this was designed to kill only Velkari. Nothing else was harmed. The Incheon Commerce Guild sent their own investigators. They were traders, practical people who dealt in goods and profit margins. They found 70 Velkari systems completely empty of military assets. Civilian populations dead on homeworlds. Colonies abandoned. It was economically devastating. The Velkari had been major trading partners. How long did this take?" A guild accountant asked, calculating losses. "According to the timestamps on the automated beacons, the initial fleet engagement lasted 14 minutes, an analyst replied. "The complete military destruction took 6 hours. The biological weapon killed the homeworld population in 4 days. Total time from first strike to complete species extinction. 11 days. The accountant stared at the numbers. 11 days. They erased a civilization that had existed for 6,000 years in 11 days. The Paraxi Union, a peaceful species of scholars and philosophers, called for an emergency meeting of all spacefaring civilizations. Representatives gathered on their homeworld, filling a great amphitheater. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened. More importantly, everyone wanted to know who was responsible. President Una Choi arrived alone. No guards, no entourage. Just one human woman walking into a room filled with hundreds of alien representatives. The silence that fell was heavy with fear and uncertainty. "Thank you for coming, President Choi," the Paraxi ambassador said carefully. "We have investigated the Velkari systems. We found evidence that suggests humanity was responsible for what happened." "We were," Yuna replied simply. She didn't elaborate, didn't justify, just stated the fact. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. The Paraxi ambassador raised a hand for silence. "Can you explain why humanity committed genocide?" "The Velkari attacked our civilian populations without provocation," Yuna said, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. "They destroyed 3 colonies, killed 3 million people, executed wounded survivors. Then they gave us 30 days to surrender or face complete extinction. They promised to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest." She paused, letting that information settle. "We considered our options. Surrender seemed wise to everyone who advised us. After all, the Velkari had never lost a war. They had conquered 70 systems. They had destroyed a dozen species. Everyone said resistance was suicide. But you didn't surrender," a Trolloth representative said. "No, because surrendering to bullies doesn't save you. It just gives them permission to kill you slowly. So we made a different choice." "You chose genocide," the Paraxi ambassador said softly. "We chose survival," Yuna corrected. "We chose to make absolutely certain that the Velkari could never threaten human life again. Not in 10 years. Not in 100. Not ever." Admiral J. Kang, who had accompanied Yuna but remained silent until now, stood up. "The Velkari culture glorified conquest. They taught their children that weakness deserved destruction. They celebrated the extinction of other species. If we had fought a conventional war, even if we won, they would have rebuilt and returned. Their entire civilization was based on domination. So you killed them all," a small voice said. It came from a young Paraxi scholar in the audience. "Every single one. Even their children." Yuna looked directly at the scholar. "Yes, every single one. It was a terrible choice. We will live with that choice for the rest of our existence. But it was either them or us. They made that clear when they murdered our farmers and executed our scientists." The Trolloth representative, Commander Yuto, stood. "I have examined your military capabilities. You have weapons we have never seen. Stealth technology that defeated the best sensors in known space. How long have you been preparing for this?" "We've been preparing for defensive war since we left Earth," Captain Minho Park said, standing beside the Admiral. "We studied every conflict in human history. We learned that the best defense is overwhelming offense when defense fails. We built weapons we hoped never to use. The Velkari forced us to use them." "And now?" the Incheon representative asked. "What does humanity want now?" "Peace," Yuna said simply. "We want to trade fairly. We want to explore the stars. We want to live quietly on our worlds and raise our children without fear. We want exactly what we wanted 31 days ago before the Velkari attacked. But you've proven you can destroy any civilization in days," the Paraxi ambassador pointed out. "How can we trust you?" "Because we didn't attack any of you," Admiral J replied. "We had the capability to strike at any target in known space. We chose only the Velkari, only those who had declared war on us, only those who had murdered our people." He stepped forward, his voice growing harder. "But understand this. We have removed every weapon we used against the Velkari from service. The stealth ships are being decommissioned. Project Whisper has been destroyed. The biological weapons have been erased. We're returning to our peaceful ways." "Then why are you telling us all this?" Yuto asked. "Because we want the galaxy to understand," Yuna said. "We're not conquerors. We're not interested in empire, but we remember every threat. We prepare for every possibility. And if someone brings war to our worlds again, we won't fight back. We'll simply end them, completely, silently, without mercy or hesitation." The amphitheater was silent for a long moment. Then the Trolloth commander Yuto did something unexpected. He bowed, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. "I understand," he said. "You are the quiet ones, the patient ones. But when roused, you are the most dangerous of all." Over the following weeks, the 3 major civilizations sent diplomatic missions to human space, not to threaten or judge, but to establish better relations. No one wanted to be the next Velkari. The message was clear. Humanity desired peace, but crossed them and face extinction. The Trolloth Federation proposed a defensive alliance. "We are warriors," their ambassador explained to Admiral J. But we are honorable warriors. We fight for glory and territory, not genocide. I think we can learn from each other. You teach us about quiet strength. We teach you about honorable combat. Jay considered this. An alliance built on mutual respect, not fear? Exactly. Though I admit having you as allies rather than enemies seems wise. The Incheon Commerce Guild sent trade delegations. The Paraxa Union sent scholars to study human history and philosophy. Slowly, humanity became integrated into galactic society, but now as equals, not victims. Captain Minho Park retired from intelligence work, but not before training his replacement, a young woman named Sora Im. The job is simple, he told her. Watch everyone. Trust no one. And if you see another Velkari situation developing, you warn the president immediately. What if they don't listen? Sora asked. They'll listen. They've seen what happens when we're forced to act. Engineer Tae Shin personally destroyed the last stealth ship. He stood in the shipyard and watched it be cut apart, knowing it was necessary but feeling a strange sadness. These ships had saved humanity, but they had also ended billions of lives. No regrets? A technician asked. Many regrets, Tae replied, but no doubts. We did what we had to do. Dr. Sumin Han erased all data on Project Whisper from every computer system. The weapon that had ended the Velkari fleet would never be built again. Knowledge can be dangerous, she said. Some things shouldn't exist, even in theory. But she kept one thing, a small file containing the basic principles. Not enough to build the weapon, but enough to prove it was possible. Just in case, she explained to President Yuna. Just in case someone needs to know we could do it again. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Trade routes were re-established. Cultural exchanges resumed. And everywhere, in the markets and meeting halls, people spoke about humanity in hushed, respectful tones. They called it the 14-minute war, though it had lasted days. They told stories about the species that had seemed so peaceful until provoked. They warned their children, never mistake kindness for weakness. And in the silence of space, humanity continued its quiet expansion, building homes and raising families, hoping never to be forced into war again, but always ready if necessary. 20 years passed. A generation of children grew up in a galaxy that remembered the Velkari as a cautionary tale. Schools taught about them in history classes, explaining how an ancient empire had fallen in 11 days because they had mistaken patience for fear. Dr. Hana Lee stood in front of the memorial on New Earth, a colony world established 5 years after the war. The memorial was simple, a black stone wall with 3 million names carved into it. Every person who died on New Jeju, Hambit Station, and Gale 5 was listed there. Visitors came every day to trace the names with their fingers and remember. Hana was old now, her hair white and her movements slow. She came to the memorial every year on the anniversary of the attack. Today, a young journalist named Junho Nam approached her. He was the son of Commander Jinwoo Nam, who had deployed the biological weapon on Valkyrius Prime. Dr. Lee, Junho said respectfully, "May I ask you a question?" "Of course," Hana replied, still looking at the names. "Do you think we were justified in doing what we did?" Hana was quiet for a long moment. "Justified is a word for philosophers and lawyers," she finally said. "I don't know if we were justified, but I know we were effective. We ensured our survival. We made certain no one would ever mistake our peaceful nature for inability to defend ourselves. My father died 5 years ago," Junho said quietly. "He never talked about what he did during the war." "But I found his journals. He wrote that he saw Velkari children playing in the cities before he deployed the weapon. He carried that with him forever." "We all carry it," Hana said. "Every person who participated in Operation Silent End lives with what we did. We don't get to forget. We don't get to pretend it was easy or clean or heroic. We killed billions to save billions. That's a weight that never leaves. Was there another way?" Hana turned to look at the young man. "Maybe, probably, but we didn't have time to find it. The Velkari gave us 30 days, and in those 30 days we had to choose between surrender and extinction. We chose a third option. Complete eradication of the threat." She pointed at the wall of names. "These people, these farmers and miners and scientists, they didn't choose war. It came to them without warning. They died because they were human and someone decided that was enough reason to kill them. So yes, we responded with overwhelming force, and I would make the same choice again." Admiral J. Kang, now retired, taught at the Defense Academy on Luna. His classroom was always full. Students came from across human space to learn from the man who had coordinated Operation Silent End. But Jay didn't teach tactics or weapons systems. He taught philosophy. The goal of military strength is to never use it, he told his students on the first day of every semester. The goal of overwhelming force is to make enemies reconsider before the first shot. We failed with the Valkyrie because we hid our capabilities. We seemed weak when we were actually deadly. Learn from that mistake, a student raised her hand. Sir, some people say we should never have built those weapons in the first place, that having them guaranteed we would use them. Those people are idiots, Jay said bluntly. The weapons didn't make the decision, we did. Humans made the choice to respond to genocide with extinction. The weapons were just tools, and after we used them, we destroyed them. That's the real lesson. Having the capability to destroy doesn't mean you must destroy, but it does mean others will think twice before attacking you. Another student asked, Do you regret it, sir? Every day, Jay replied without hesitation. I ordered the deaths of billions. I carry that weight. But regret doesn't mean it was wrong. It means I understand the cost. A general who doesn't regret the deaths he orders is a monster. A general who lets that regret stop him from protecting his people is a coward. I chose to be neither. Captain Minho Park had died 3 years ago, but his successor, Director Sora Im, continued his work. The intelligence division he had built remained vigilant, watching the galaxy for any signs of another Valkyrie situation. In her office on Earth, Sora reviewed reports from hundreds of agents across known space. Most were routine: trade disputes, minor conflicts, the usual political maneuvering of spacefaring civilizations. But she watched for patterns: aggressive expansion, genocidal rhetoric, any signs that someone might think humanity had gone soft. Ma'am, her assistant said, we're receiving increased chatter from the border regions. A new species has been discovered. They call themselves the Azran. Early reports suggest they're militaristic. How militaristic? They've conquered 3 nearby systems, enslaved the populations. They're asking about humanity, specifically about the Valkyrie. Sora felt her blood go cold. What are they asking? Whether the stories are true, whether we really destroyed the Valkyrie or if it's just propaganda. Send me everything we have on them, and get me a meeting with President Quan. President Quan was Yuna Choi's successor, a younger man who hadn't lived through the HFY War but had studied it extensively. He listened to Sora's report with growing concern. You think they might test us? He asked. I think they're considering it, sir. The Valkyrie are now ancient history. New civilizations are appearing who didn't witness what we did. They hear stories and wonder if they're exaggerated. What do you recommend? We remind them, Sora said coldly. Not with weapons. Not with threats. Just with facts. We show them the Valkyrie systems. We give them access to our historical records. We let them see exactly what happened when someone attacked us. President Quan considered this. And if that's not enough, then we make it very clear that we still have the ability to do it again, even if we destroyed the specific weapons we used. We've been peaceful for 20 years, sir. That's good, but we can't let the galaxy forget why we're left in peace. The message was sent through official diplomatic channels. The Azran received historical documents, orbital surveys of dead Valkyrie worlds, and detailed timelines of Operation Silent End. They also received a short message from President Quan. Humanity desires peace and will respect all sovereign civilizations. We engage in fair trade and honest diplomacy, but we remember every threat, and we prepare for every possibility. The Valkyrie learned this lesson. We hope you will not need to. The Azran went quiet for 3 months. Then they sent an ambassador requesting a trade agreement and a non-aggression pact. They never explained their change in attitude, but everyone understood. They had seen the evidence and chosen wisdom over pride. General Hyun Ko, now very old, spent his retirement writing a comprehensive history of the Valkyrie War. He interviewed everyone who had participated, collecting their stories and perspectives. The book was thousands of pages long and brutally honest about what humanity had done. In the introduction, he wrote, "This is not a proud history. This is not a tale of heroism. This is a record of what happens when peaceful people are forced to become killers. We did what we thought necessary. History will judge whether we were right. But future generations must know the truth. Extinction is easy when you have the tools and the will. The hard part is living with what you've done afterward. The book became required reading at every military academy and diplomatic school across human space. Engineer Tae Shin, in his final years, gave an interview to a documentary filmmaker. "People ask me if I'm proud of the stealth ships," he said. "I'm not. I'm proud that we destroyed them after. That we didn't keep them as tools of conquest. We built them for one purpose, used them for that purpose, and then made sure they could never be used again. That's the real achievement, not the building, but the destroying." On Gale 5, now rebuilt as a research station again, scientists continued the work that had been interrupted 20 years ago. They studied alien biology, developed cures for diseases, and advanced humanity's understanding of the universe. Dr. Hannah Lee visited once before she died, walking through the laboratories where her colleagues had been executed. "This is right," she said to the station director. "Life continuing, science advancing. This is what those Valkyrie soldiers tried to destroy. They wanted to stop human curiosity and innovation. Instead, they just delayed it. We're still here, still learning, still growing. They're not." The memorial on New Earth expanded to include a second wall. This one listed everyone who had died during Operation Silent End, the human pilots, soldiers, and agents who hadn't returned. There were far fewer names on this wall, only 317 compared to 3 million. But each name represented someone who had chosen to risk everything to protect humanity. Junho Nam, the journalist, published a series of articles examining the long-term psychological effects on those who had participated in the war. Many struggled with what they had done. Some had nightmares. Others became advocates for peace, hoping their actions would be the last time humanity needed to wage war. "We're not monsters," one veteran told him. "Monsters enjoy killing. We did what was necessary, and then spent the rest of our lives trying to be better people because of it. That's the difference. The galaxy settled into a stable peace. The Trolloth Federation and humanity maintained their alliance, based on mutual respect rather than fear. The Incheon Commerce Guild prospered from increased trade. The Paraxi Union studied human history and philosophy, trying to understand the species that could be both gentle and genocidal. In the quiet spaces between stars, human ships continued their exploration. They discovered new worlds and established new colonies. They encountered new species and established diplomatic relations. And everywhere they went, they brought the same message. We desire peace, but we remember war. 20 years after the Valkyrie fell, President Kwan gave a speech at the memorial on New Earth. He stood before the black walls with the millions of names and spoke to a crowd of thousands. "We gather here to remember the dead," he said. "Not just those who died at Valkyrie hands, but also the Valkyrie themselves. 4 billion souls erased from existence because their leaders chose war. We don't celebrate this. We don't take pride in it. We remember it as a warning to ourselves and others." He paused, looking at the crowd. "The galaxy calls us the quiet ones. They say we're dangerous because we prefer peace. They're right. The most dangerous species isn't the one that loves war. It's the one that has mastered war so completely that they choose peace instead. And if you force us to abandon that choice, we won't fight. We'll simply end the threat. Completely. Permanently. Wrapped in silence." The crowd was quiet as his words echoed across the memorial grounds. "But our true strength isn't in our ability to destroy," Kwan continued. "It's in our choice not to. For 20 years, we've maintained peace not through threats but through respect. We've built rather than conquered. We've created rather than destroyed. That's the legacy we want. Not the 14-minute war, but the 2 decades of peace that followed." As the ceremony ended and people began to leave, Hannah Lee's words from earlier that day echoed in many minds. "We carry the weight so our children don't have to." And in the darkness of space, humanity continued forward, hoping never to become killers again but always ready if necessary, living with the terrible knowledge that sometimes peace could only be guaranteed through the threat of absolute extinction, wrapped in silence.